Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me and helping me launch my 2022 version of my CISSP class. As always, my objective personally is to get better, and I appreciate everybody here and feeding me information and help guide me along as you use your expertises and share your information, things you work with. And I know your objective, though. People come to my class to pass the CISSP. That's what I've been doing primarily for the last 20 years, is preparing people for certification classes. So if you're like, yeah, is this on the test? I'm going to do my best. I understand that's your objective, but it's also, as I said, to collaborate and share information. We live in a wonderful time. We live in the internet, the information communication age, and we're going to take advantage of that. Our overall objective is to, as a CISSP, you have your code of ethics, and the primary code of ethic is to protect society, the common good. We want to work for everybody. We're going to talk a lot about the risks of this decade. You know, from well, in AI, probably, or excuse me, in IT, probably AI, and the biggest risks I personally believe, and I think most AI experts would agree, is the bias errors in logic. Right? So we'll talk more about that. All right. And our overall for me is to secure this future of abundance. We live in a wonderful time. Don't believe the news. The news is just there to sell you pillows and mesothelioma ads. It's not really unbiased news, speaking of bias. They're biased to scare you, so you'll be stuck. All right. Now, for you CISSP aspirants, please, this class is not a replacement so you don't have to read. This isn't all you need to know. This is just to help put context. So please do read your books. You know, if you don't have 5 years experience, I can't give it to you this week. So please, I highly recommend for most people to read the official guide and then at least one other guide. I personally like the 11th hour. I also am a fan of the CISSP for Dummies guides, but sometimes you need like a thin guide. Now, if you've got tons of years of experience, maybe all you need is those thinner guides and maybe my class, but please, by default, read the official study guide. I also recommend you take practice tests. It doesn't matter how long you've been working in the field. You might know how to do it, but you didn't know it was called that sometimes in other languages. So please do, and I highly recommend CCCure and at least one other. Right? And then my favorite overall book on security, though, is Ross Anderson's Security Engineering. It's not a CISSP study guide, but it is, for me, the best book on the subject there is. And that's the third edition, just came out this time last year. All right, our daily schedule roughly today, we're going to go over this introduction. We'll do our security and risk management. We're going to welcome you to the to the enterprise. And then asset security, I start today. And depending on the flow of the class, I can sometimes finish today. Of course, I've modified my slides a little bit, so this is the first time through this version, so we'll see. Day two is then we start our security engineering, and this is where we learn how all the components work. So if day one is figuring out what restaurant you want to go to and what you're going to eat on the menu, day two is how to cook that. Right. And we're going to start really cooking all these, engineering all these components from operating systems to physical architectures to cryptographic architectures. So on day three, that's really just another architecture. It's a separate domain, but domain for communication and network security is really just an architecture, as well as a day four where we put together identity and access management solutions. So all of that is really architecting things. And then domain six is when we test it out. Is this what you ordered, sir? Bring it up to the customer at the restaurant. And then the hard part, day seven, or excuse me, day five, operation, domain seven. This is when somebody has to clean up. And nobody likes doing the dishes. Everybody likes eating food, but that's going to be the hard part, patching your systems and all the not fun stuff, changing passwords. And then we go through this entire SDLC again, and the last domain, domain 8 on day 5, and that's our software security. The test itself is up to 150 questions. It is a adaptive, so you make it as little as 100, and you can pass or fail with 100 questions. So their metrics are not exact. It's not like, you got to get it exact. And first of all, each question is not graded equally. But the basic thing is you get 25 questions or so across all domains. And then if you do fine, you get them all right, then you're going to feel that your test probably wasn't heavy in any one domain or anything. And if you get them all right, you pass at 100. If you miss a question, they're going to start hitting you in that domain more and more. And you could fail with 100. You could also pass with 150. And I would hate to think that they would actually get you to 149 and they're like, you failed like 10 questions ago. We're just making you wait here. So if you're at 150, you're probably doing okay. You're probably right there. Get that question right. Don't give up yet. It's up to 3 hours. You may not review. For some people, that's a pain, because sometimes, you get that question like, oh, that's right. Then I had the other one wrong. Yeah. You can go back. But often that's a good thing, because sometimes people go back when they, I still don't know the answer, but 10 C's in a row, that looks weird. And it's not typically a good idea. All right, now some of our updates, obviously, if you're paying attention to 2022, you've seen some of the things with like Facebook changing their name to Meta and everything, and all the new whatever Web 3.0, Internet 3, whatever they want to call it, the spatial web. The hot term today is a metaverse, and there's going to be multiple. But they're all built on these newer technologies, these blockchain, which is just basically digital signature stuff, right? We're just exploiting these, and we're going to see a lot about how these, it's actually known as a Merkle tree. Ralph Merkle created this idea of chaining together digitally signed chunks of data. Now, so that could be in a blockchain, or you could do these matrices, but it's creating a history and her story that can't be deleted very easily. So we're going to have much more integrity in our documentation. It's going to be great. But there's a lot of technology, a lot of new stuff. It's like a new road. When they rolled out cars, there was a lot of children out there who wanted to drive, but their parents couldn't tell them how to drive. They had to learn on their own. So that's where we're at. We're also going to build more up on the PKI implementations and how these blockchains work, which I said to the digital signatures. Well, you sign something by creating a checksum, a hash, and using your private key to encrypt it. Well, where'd you get your private key from? Yeah. So we're going to talk about how you get these private keys and how we can have trust in them, and that the work right, as close as possible. When I say right, I always think of fire. Fire, we're not risk-free on fire, are we? We're never going to get risk-free, but we can mitigate it to the point where I don't want to get rid of fire. I like cooking every day. There's some newer series of NIST documents I noticed that many students are not aware of. They're relatively new. 2017, I think, was the first posting, but I'm particularly very big on building up on PKI, how DNS can be secured, how mail can be secured, right? And we're going to see how, we've had these S-MIME certificates out, these private public keys out since the 90s. Try getting an S-MIME 4.0 certificate. Tell me how that works out for you today. Data privacy laws. More and more I hear the test is covering. Some people feel it's all GDPR. I don't feel you need to GDPR is big, but if you understand the basic terminologies of all the newer privacy regulations and the basically the responsibility of who's in control. So you watch out for controller requirements. No more than during the COVID thing, do we see how supply chain stuff is, we're trying to get physical supplies, trying to get paper products, but it's also been exploited. Our applications and clouds are supplied by various providers. Like, I don't need to do that. I'm just using this, whatever API set. How do I really know I'm being supplied by the proper APIs? And we're going to talk a lot about that. That to me is probably some of the bigger risks. And, it's hard enough to get these private public keys rolled out, right, for people. Again, PKI and S-MIME has been out since the 90s, but do you have an S-MIME certificate for your home use? I'll bet you don't, right? Most people don't. In my experience, only the U.S. Department of Defense and other places like that. And then some people I'm starting to see in the financial sector are starting to roll it out, but I'd say we've got about 2% deployment. That's for people. APIs, how many of you use an OpenID to identify every API? And we'll talk more about that. But don't get scared. I'm not a doomsday guy. No, actually, I think we live in a wonderful time. We live in the most exciting time in history, and we just want to secure it. Now, with the information security principles we always talk about are, to protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And most people I find put way too much on confidentiality. How many people here have hidden something so well that you yourself don't know where it is? Right? It's availability that matters. I've got a really cool Ethernet full duplex tap here. You know what I don't know where it is? The power supply cable that's proprietary. It's useless. So it's not available to me anymore. Now, Peter Diamandis, a great writer, and he told me, I saw this book, Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think, and I built on that, a lot of that. He talks a lot about how we're moving from an age of scarcity, where if there's not enough whatever water to go around, the mountain people and the valley people are going to fight it out, and they got to lie to each other about stuff that's like the Eagles versus Dallas. Eagles don't tell Dallas what they're going to do next. They keep that play confidential. In fact, they'll even use trickery. Why, he acted like he was going to throw the ball and actually just ran. Faker, liar, heresy. There's errors in information that way. But as we do commerce, as there's enough water for everybody, maybe the mountain people could bring the peanut butter and the valley people could bring the jelly, and they'll work together. Integrity and availability are much more important today. Right? When you get something digitally signed, that's the whole point of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin isn't there to be confidential. It's that it's digitally signed. I know it wasn't altered, right? And it's going to be available because all the And when we talk about AI and the risks of AI, I don't worry about the Terminator where my vacuum cleaner gets an update one day, it gets smarter than me, and the next morning it decides I'm going to be doing the vacuuming from now on. I don't think it's going to feel like that. That takes feeling. I don't believe in sentience in a robot just yet. I don't know. I'll keep an open mind there, but I do believe in errors. And when a waiter gets my order wrong, he brings me the wrong food, but it's still food. When Alexa gets me wrong, she says the damnedest things. Oh, did you say medium rare? Oh, I thought you said release toxic fumes into the environment. You should say the MD5 hash on that. That's total collision. Anyway, so to fix this, we need more than just the king's opinion. We need everybody's opinion, the common good. All right, and that to me is the overall objective of one of my favorite scientists, Buckminster Fuller, that we do things that advantage everybody without disadvantaging anyone. And then we can beat all of these bias problems. And I am a Star Trek fan. Some of you may have seen some of my videos out there, and I'm wearing my red shirt. Oh, little homework. Martine, I want I was thinking of this last night, a free platinum membership, platinum, to anyone who right now will put together an actual, I want to know, if you were an insurance company, would you create a higher premium for a red shirt or one of the other ones? Is it really true that red shirts die more? All right. All right. Anyway, they have a lot of analogies that will help you as a CISSP. Larry, I didn't come here to learn Star Trek. Well, it's going to help. It puts context. This is what I say. You can read your book and it's just facts. I'm going to make a little story with Star Trek and show you how we're going to secure the Enterprise. Right? That's the name of their ship. And instead of the ISO, we call it the Federation. Well, Federated Identity Management means it's ISO signed. So we do have a lot of Federation stuff here, right? We got to understand all the equipment on the ship has to be Federation certified. That's the common criteria. All of our people have to be Federation certified, like CISSP. AI is the new fire, and data is the new oil, and your data is very valuable. At the end of this class, I hope you realize that universal basic income is not just coming, it's your fair share. It's not welfare, and I'll show you why that's true. But fake news and lies, that doesn't fuel anything. It just leaves future generations, look, we got to clean up. Turned out this was wrong. So Ray Kurzweil puts out a book, if you're not familiar, in I think in 2005, called "The Singularity is Near." Blows away a bunch of my students. It takes dumb old Larry 12 years to finally listen to his students and read the book. And when I say read, I mean Audible reads it to me, but whatever. And it blows me away. And okay. All right. So Gordon Moore, the founder of Intel, had discovered in the 60s that they were able to double the amount of processors or excuse me, double the amount of circuits on a processor every 2 years. And because the electrons have a shorter distance to go, that the processing speed doubles, on an average, something like 18 months. And this has continued. And if you take this exponential doubling thing, and any IP guy should know this, exponential doublings are very bizarre, where you don't realize that, it's small number, like, the processor is, for instance, 1/1,000,000th as fast as a human, the AI is whatever, as smart as an amoeba, not even, it gets to, whatever, as smart as a cockroach, as smart as a mammal, as smart as a chimpanzee. And then this is human. Let's say it's as smart as the village idiot, as smart as Einstein, 2 Einsteins, 4 Einsteins. And it just keeps going. And he argued that we'd be able to create an artificial general intelligence. That's not, like an AI that can play chess but can't play checkers. This is, passes the Turing test. And he predicted by 2029, and I'm still going with that number, my friends, and that by 2045, all humans. And now this isn't in the movies. It's the one supercomputer that controls everything. No, it's yours that you have in your phone or whatever. It's not a rectangular box. It's an earring. I don't know. Elon Musk wants to put stuff in my head. That's a I prefer a wearable. But whatever the case is, he called it the singularity, meaning from physics that I have no idea what happens next. I can't see beyond a black hole. Yeah, so that's why it's called that. And just through 2029, that's a heck of a fun thing. Now, people think of this is going to be generally smarter. And again, the Terminator, it's going to want to kill us. I don't believe that. Anyway, introducing me, I am a coach. I like to call myself, not a master. I've been involved in, I just got my 4th degree black belt from this guy, Tom Updegrove. In this class, by the way, I don't want to do introductions because I am going to record this and put this up. So we're not going to do this today, but in my private class, typically. This is Tom Updegrove, and he just awarded me. He's a 9th degree black belt under the late great Joe Lewis. And Tom is also a master CEH. And I forgot to ask him. Maybe we can get him to present for us this week. When he's not working, he's awesome. He's the best pen tester I know. And he taught me. He says, I hate masters, Larry. Oh, I can't stand him. So he's masters rule slaves. We're coaches. I'm here to serve you. I serve you. You're the star player. Joe Lewis hated masters. In fact, he said, oh, don't follow me. I hate followers. I make a lot of mistakes in life. And when I do, I need help. And you know who can't help me? A follower. So he said, a good leader, he said, will have fellowships with other leaders. He said, I need somebody who's good. It's Captain Kirk has Spock and McCoy. He doesn't do all the doctor and an engineer and stuff. And Joe Lewis knew he was going to pass. He had cancer. And I was at his last class in 2011. And he said, when I'm gone, don't go teaching Joe Lewis style. He encouraged us to make up our own style. That's why he has Joe Lewis. That's the point. I'm trying to teach you to be your own master. All right. And on our black belt, though, is a bias thing that I love to give him credit for. Is I will not permit considerations of race, religion, national origin, or social standing to influence in any way my relations with my students. So I hope you guys feel respected here. Martine she'll be here most of the time in and out, but she'll notice that's my daughter. She will definitely pick on me if I embarrass her. My first computer, I had a Commodore 64 in 1980. 3. Actually, I'm working with them now with a recording engineer, Otto Capabianco, kind of a Commodore 64. And he had a magazine with this Commodore 64 magazine. It was like, it had a story on the electronic cottage, how with computers and modems, this was a 300 baud modem. That's 300 bits per second. You would dial up on your phone and then plug it in. And it said you'd be able to work from home. And they did this whole study about how families only, thousands of years, 5,000 years of culture, humans only stopped working with their families in the industrial age. And
detected at the Black Cave reading. Front door 1.
It's probably a false positive. That's my Ring doorbell. But that people would be able to work from home and stay back with their family. And I bought my computer to do this so I could work. And it took COVID to force people to realize you can do it. Yeah, you don't have to go to work. Some people are like, I need to get away from my family, but I know my cat's happier. Yeah, so I've been at this a while, and I've been professionally at this for a while too. This is me in 1986, I believe. That's yeah, me and Larry Jones, the 2 Larrys, and IBM PC certified. Woo. I was IBM Advanced Connectivity certified in 1988 or 89, and that's when I learned about the OSI model. Did you know the OSI model is going to replace TCP/IP? TCP/IP is dead, we learned in 1988. You were going to find out that didn't happen, and what happened to the OSI model. Oh, my first hacking class. And these are now the counterpane guys. I took their very first hacking class and I won their ultimate hacking hands-on. And I got an autographed copy of the book at the end of the class. I had to hack through. It was pretty funny. A lot of social engineering there. And I was a CEH, or have been a CEH since 2002. And some more things, Novell, CNE. Any CNEs here? Anybody remember that? I still love my network. Yeah, there's Ray Kurzweil's thing. And Ray Kurzweil points out that if you know about Moore's Law and that it's based on, how many, we keep doubling how many circuits we could put on a silicon wafer. Well, at a certain point, I mean, there's never going to be a transistor where a conductor is less than an atom thick. So we knew that we were going to start running into limits, and we expected it now. I think we expected as early as 2019. It's still, we're finding things, but bottom line, as Kurzweil points out, that's not the only time we did this information doubling process. So it's not just on. So he calls the Moore's Law is actually here what he called the fifth paradigm. And that there'd be something else coming up. And he predicts not quantum computing, by the way. He thinks it's going to be a more multi-core type of kind of thing. He calls it 3D computing. Now, many smart people warn of AI. Humans would be limited and slow. They would redesign itself, but it doesn't have feeling. Again, I just can't picture my vacuum cleaner going, from now on, you're going to be cleaning up my. I just don't see that happening. So I don't really worry about that. Musk is pushing that now. I think Musk is also putting out that it could be a bias error. So I do agree that these errors could happen and they could be horrible. And I think one way to reduce the errors, in one of the greatest books, I should probably put it down, it's called Super Intelligent by Nick Bostrom. I think that's the book that scared a lot of those earlier guys. And one of Nick's problems is how do you tell the AI, what words will you use to program it so it doesn't misunderstand your requirements? And one of my favorite researchers in fact, the author of one of my favorite books in the last couple of years, Rana Kalioubi, noticed that something so obvious. It's so obvious once you think about it, but you don't have to listen to somebody's words. Alexa would make a lot fewer mistakes if she could see the look on my face. Beatle fans. I asked her to play a block of Beatles. She started with 5 Ringo songs. Really? I like Ringo as much as the next guy. So I think she's got something working out here. And by looking at our faces and doing, you can anonymize the data. We're going to talk a lot about the Delphi technique on day 5, and it's very testable, to make sure that we get the data we need without compromising people's privacy. And some guidelines from my dear mother. My mother was very, very smart, and she pointed out that all of history is just his. If we had hers, we would be a lot smarter. Blockchain hopefully will preserve that a lot better. But she's a brilliant woman. She's first of all, she's very suspect of people. She pointed out one of the most, to me, fundamental information security concepts. You have the things you know that you know, right? We hear a lot about it. The things you know that you don't know, but it's what you didn't know that you didn't know that, well, that's not all there is. Now, most problems actually come from the things you thought you knew turned out to be wrong. And especially when people lie to you. And that's the point. Oh, wait a minute. He faked like he was going to throw and he ran. That's what he wanted you to think, sucker. That's how they get you. He's always looking out for me. We were poor. My father passed when I was little. God bless her, with a woman in those days trying to raise a family. And she even taking her to the Chinese buffet, she'd get very careful. Don't fill up on the rice and the breads, Larry. That's how they get you. You eat the meat, you eat the fish. And she was very upset. They get you coming and going. But I bet you she could have passed this exam too. My mother was very well read, and she could tell you the Latin and Greek origin of any word. And I know, for instance, I have forensic students don't know the meaning of the word forensics and would miss that question. It means to be in a forum. She would know that. All right, we are going to use the Enterprise, the Starship Enterprise, as our ship. But actually, most of our terminologies in risk management on our test from the ISO, from the Federation, come from early Federation standards, from the insurance industry to insure ships. Govern means to steer a ship. Cyber, just an American word for it from Norbert Wiener, who did it in information, but govern literally means to steer. It's the captain of the ship. And when you're steering a ship, you're going to steer out of the way of the dangers you can see. A lot of dangers you can't see on a ship, especially 5,000 years. We've only had electric lights up until about 200 years ago, right? What were they using? Candles? Nighttime? The cliffs under the water are the worst. You see the island and it's whatever, it's a mile away, but no, it's not. It's right there in front of you. Just most of it's underwater, maybe 5 feet. And when you hit that could be the end of your ship. You better be able to hopefully prevent that from happening. But if you didn't, you better have lifeboats. Somebody awake at the, somebody stayed up at the lookout. All right, so the ship's there. Writing it down will help. That know the rocks are there, the cliffs are there. Write it down. You log it. You create a map. In pictures and in words, you will make sure you know ahead of time. So then when you plan, you read, you preview this map, and you get out there and you hit the rock again. You're like, wait a minute, what the heck happened? This is going to sound weird, sir, but we notice that whenever the moon is full, we don't see those rocks. You start discovering non-obvious patterns for some reason, and it had to sound weird to people 5,000 or 3,000 years ago when they were creating these standards, but yep. Moon affects that, but it's predictable. It's not always predictable. The weather. Well, I knew the rocks were there, but the wind blew us right into it. So knowing the weather, which changes any moment. The weather is up-to-date news. That is the birth of news, was to know the weather. So you could take your ships out to do commerce. And some of the birth of, again, the terminology we use here, everything from why it is latitude 0. And when you're Wireshark and you see the time of that thing, it is universal time code or Greenwich Mean Time. Everybody knows what Unix time is. You just start the calendar not at Jesus's birth, but in 1970. But whatever the case is, universal, it started because Lloyd's of London wanted to get everybody on the same page. so they could get caffeine and sugar for the king's wife, who liked to do that. She thought it was pretty cool. This was a new thing. The Portuguese invented this new sail earlier, and now people could do international commerce. And this is the birth of so much of what we're going to do this week. Lloyd's of London will insure you. If you could think like an insurance agent, you'll go a long way on this test. Lloyd's Bank would only lend you the money if you could get insured. The birth of the news. This was the start of news. Lloyd's List, of course, until we had radio, it wasn't really easy to get weather updates to ships. But that happened in 1912. Right? I'll talk more about that. It's some cool stuff that happened there. Lloyd's Registrar is what we do. All right. Will answer quite a few questions already. When you take your exam, for those of you taking your CISSP, you will not be taking the ISE square. You will not be going to the ISC. They're the certifier. You will be taking at some Pearson VUE or so. They're the validator. Got it? That doesn't mean that when you pass and the ISC square issues you the certification that you get a job or you're assigned to any one mission. And for that mission, by the way, to work, it's not just you that have to be validated and certified and accredited. It's the ship. That's the same as today, ISO, IEC 27001. Got it? Every part of the ship has to be certified. Every component. Is that a certified anchor? Will that hold up under the type of weather they have? Where's my drawing tool here? There we go. Will that hold up on every part of the ship, every component? And that is ISO, IEC. That's the technical commission. Whenever you see IEC, that probably applies to us. And that is 15408, or the common criteria. And then you're okay for that mission. All right. So that's what we're going to do too. We're going to certify the organization with 27001. We're going to certify our equipment and our operating systems, all of our technologies with the common criteria. And we're going to certify you guys, CISSP, which is an ISO 17024, by the way. And Lloyd's is still here today, by the way. Yeah, they're doing spaceships and cyber. They're the first to do both. And they are now an ISO registrar. Yeah, so these are the ones we're going to go over, and we're going to know a lot about these this week. When you take your test, please remember this is a management business test, and the overall thing is to complete the mission. Your job is not to just keep a good ship. Your job is to get the ship, say, from England to China, pick up the tea and get back without wasting time and money. In fact, I'd like you to get there for free. Is there a coupon today? Do they have a warp drive? Sure, I'd like to get there in no time. But you can't do that. It takes time. So we try not to waste time. The CEO, the captain of the ship, just wants to complete the mission. And he has two basic advisors at senior levels. The COO, he's like that liberal manager. We got to get there on time. Come on, I don't care what it costs. Take the toll road. And the CFO is like our conservative, old school. I don't know what's happening. What we have, old school conservatives. It's like, wait a second. What do we need to take the toll road? It's 15 minutes. What's the difference? You think money grows on trees? And you have to, the captain go, well, let's just pick something. But whatever I pick has to meet the scope. When you set the scope, you have a baseline that you cannot go under. If it takes whatever 6 weeks to get there, I can't allocate 5. I will never get there. Now, I might say something could go wrong. Let's give us 7 weeks. But I don't want to go, something could go wrong. Give me 5 years. It usually takes 6 weeks. That'd be far out of scope. It's kind of like, for my car, I need 4 tires. 3 or less will not do it. But I have a fifth, a very tiny fifth. Actually, I like my old full scale tire. I do not bring 20 extra tires. The other important thing, and I would say in my biased experience, most of my students seem to be technical people who have to become waiters, so to speak. Get somebody else joining us here. Hold on here. All right, so I like to think of this basic project. You've heard me use the analogy of a restaurant. This is the users. And their manager. This is the CISSP. Most of you guys have had experience here. These are subject matter experts. These are not CISSPs. But most of you are SMEs. You're great cooks, but that's not your job here, okay? Some of you may have been operations staffs as well. Not CISSPs. See, the CISSP is primarily an architect. Your job is to advise. Advise and design. That's your job. Don't fire anybody. You don't have that authority. You don't decide what they want. You know what you're going to have? Now you're going to go, I want you to get the medium rare. Now, I don't care. I don't care if you're vegetarian. You got to try this steak, I tells you. No. And that's the problem. People try to either be, and these are managers, right? This data owner is this, if this user is one of the people that works in customer service, one of the salespeople, this is the sales manager. If you're a programmer, you get to do the cooking. If you're an operations staff, you get to whatever, down the firewall, reboot it or something. I just got a message that my internet was unstable. It always does that just after you lost me. So I apologize.
It was only for like 30 seconds. I wasn't sure if it was just me.
Oh, thanks, Martine. Oh, it was that, and no matter what I do, I got to pay my bill, by the way. I thought I set up the auto payment. I just changed providers because of the last provider, and they ran fiber to the place. And I was like, what are you guys doing out here? We're putting fiber. I was like, I'll sign up, but I get the same problem. And the only thing left is my Google Mesh routers. I have the old version ones. That's the only, and I think I even bypassed that once. Anyway, all right, so the CISSP's job, and we're going to go over this SDLC a lot this week, is to do the hardest part. We have to analyze what people want and design, write it down. Do not be the guy that, your job is, the cooks only follow the plan. Most cooks do not go out, the guy is really brilliant, but you don't put him in front of customers. This is the person that's good with customers. It's really hard to get a question right on a test if you misunderstood it. The hardest part of requirements in that for the waiter is to understand what the person said. I've got a lot of good cooks that get my questions wrong because they read the question wrong. I said, man, it said which process below. You picked a metric. Oh. If answers don't matter if you think it's the wrong question. All right, this is my mother's taxonomy of information. Again, true is like if you think of a chest of drawers, and we're going to use this as a database all week. I have a folder, a database. I have it's called shirts. And in there are shirts. Those are things I know that I know, right? I had information about that. There's another one though, that says private. I don't know what's in there. It's locked, but I know there's something in there, right? So that's a true false. Things I think I know, I have some information about that, but I don't know what it is. You know, there's a hidden panel in the back. There's a hidden panel. I didn't even know it was there. I had no idea. I didn't even look there. And that's where most people leave you off. That's the things you didn't know that you didn't know. I had no information about that. Dang it. Yeah, it's back here. But that's not where my missing shirt is. No, missing shirt is in the drawer that's marked pants. I didn't bother looking there because I just assumed that was pants. That's how most problems happen, whether it's a mistake or malware. Viruses don't come in and say, hi, I'm a virus. It says, we're your bank. Or my favorite, the cat video. I love cats and I love animals in general, but there was a cat video and it's kind of funny because my wife just got it and I swear it's 10 years old. It was one of my favorite. I said, oh, this is perfect social engineering. It's a cat playing the piano. And my wife said, I said, oh my God, I talk about that. She sent it to me. I don't know where it is. It's probably in a text she sent me. That's great. I'll be saying it all week. The cat's playing the piano. You had to click. All right. Our attacks on information can be passive or active. At a very basic level, are they sending information or are they just receiving information? Eavesdropping, they're just receiving. I can't tell if you're receiving unless I can measure some type of quantum entanglement, which is testable. We'll talk about that later. But for the most part, if you're sniffing my network, I don't know it. I could encrypt my data. I could have isolated the data. So while it's undetectable, it is preventable. Active attacks, that's somebody's calling you on the phone constantly. I can certainly tell that's happening, but I've yet to find a way to stop all these things. No, they're not always preventable. We're going to talk a lot about that. Please remember that with fraud. Lloyd's of London dealt with that a lot, right? We can't prevent fraud at a very basic level. If I drive my car and I keep my keys, then you can't drive it unless you break my car somehow. But if I give you the keys to my car, like the parking lot attendant, what's to prevent you from going in? You now have the keys. If you're the admin of my network, what's to prevent you from taking over my directory? I'm the CEO, but I let you administer my network. Microsoft allows you to log that event. If I could say you're not allowed. This is mine only, and as the admin, you take it, and it just logs that event. Fraud is detectable. Root isn't. That's why most builds of Linux, want you to not use root. Where are we going? I think that's probably the hardest part sometimes. Policies and procedures. Standards, baselines, all very, very testable. They don't prevent, detect, or respond to anything. But they do give me direction, and that's the hardest part. When the roads came out and highways were new, and I said kids didn't have their parents telling them how to drive. It's hard. It's hard to operate without directions. I personally have felt that we're moving into space. I'm an old Star Trek fan, as you may have picked up by now. And I read a book called The High Frontier by Gerard O'Neill when I was a teenager. And while I was reading that, one of his students around my age is Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos was actually learned from. So Jeff Bezos is also obsessed with these space colonies that these designs came from these artists, Rick Guy and Don Davis, and they published them at NASA, and they say you could use them, but give them credit. So these are been the backgrounds of my slides for like 20 plus years. So. And a couple of the lessons from Star Trek. I'm going to use today I'm wearing my Scotty red shirt, but Spock is a quantitative guy, if you're not familiar, and he can add up numbers. So Spock, is it going to rain? Let's do the risk of raining. Should we bring an umbrella tomorrow? Spock can speak quantitatively, matter-of-factually, about anything he can measure. Please remember, you can't measure everything. I'm a packet analyst. I get very, like tired listening to people's opinions, like any packet analyst does. We were like, all right, yeah, I'm sure that's what you think is on your network, but I'm sniffing it. I know you tell me there's no IPv6, but I'm looking at it. But I can't see it all. Any packet analyst knows I could speak matter-of-factly about the packets I measure on your network, but nobody measures all the packets on your network. Is it going to rain, Spock? He tells you the wind direction, the temperature. Is it going to rain, Spock? You can't measure everything. Insufficient data, Captain. He can tell you what's not going to happen. When you're taking your test, it's not A or B. Is it C or D? Insufficient data, Captain. I've never been to this planet. I don't know who Ron Rivest is. And Kirk just says, well, we haven't picked C in a while. Or I just washed the Enterprise. Whenever that happens, it seems like it's going to rain. Let's bring an umbrella. You do your best. Again, Spock can point out what's wrong. When you measure something, Larry drives, and I'll tell you, I drive a Honda CRV. Larry drives a vehicle. That is a right answer. There is nothing wrong with that answer. Larry drives a Honda Accord. Well, that's more precisely wrong. I don't drive an Accord. Just saying I drive a vehicle is accurate. Saying I drive a Honda Accord is more precise type of vehicle, but it's wrong. Larry drives a Honda CRV. Always rule out, let Spock pick the ones that are inaccurate first. And then Kirk says, well, this one's more precise. I'm going to say Honda CRV. They're both right, but I'm going to say the most precise one. Somebody has chat. Can you repeat that again? Oh, sure. Back there. There we go. So when you're picking an answer, let's say RSA is a encryption algorithm. Is a for data encryption. Data encryption now, okay. And asymmetric. Encryption. Okay, so we have it's an encryption algorithm. Okay, that's accurate. It's a data encryption algorithm. No, it's not. No, RSA does not encrypt data. Even if the people who wrote Thunderbird email 4.0 thought it did, or at least the help panel the last time I looked at it, thinks it does. No, it doesn't. No, RSA is for encrypting. It does two things. RSA is key agreement, key exchange, we'll call it, and it is a signing algorithm. And it's asymmetric. Yeah. So this is the better answer. I would pick this. Even though this is not wrong, this is better. Does that make sense?
Yes, Larry. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking. All right, now it is an English test. So those of you who speak more than one language, shame on you. It's going to take you longer to process stuff. I tell you about learning more than one language. doofuses. Now, my mother spoke 6 or so languages, but English was her primary. If English isn't your primary language, it's a little tricky. And we're going to, hopefully I'm going to point that out all week. That's some of the things I like to point out to pay respect to my mother, and make sure you know, even in the United States, we don't speak, guys, American guys, we don't speak the proper Queen's English. We speak American English. Now, actually the ISC² test is going to mix both and forth. If you took like the CISM, it's British. CRISC is American only. The CISSP is going to mix both. ISO standards, British. NIST, American. And we're going to play around, make sure we know, oh, it says authorized. That's the same as accredit. Oh, thank you. We're going to get those words, and we're going to, oh, no, in this one, they often use that. All right. So that's our introduction. We want to make sure that, of course, I know you're here to take your CISSP, but it's an exciting time. We live in the most exciting time in history, and the news scares you. Again, it's there to sell products. It's not unbiased. It's not the weather. Sometimes I just want the weather. So hopefully, all we got to do is get it right. Peter has a line I love. He said, "Just don't die from anything stupid." All right, let's take our first.